Well, tonight we're going to look at Exodus 31 and get started on 32 because 31 is real short, 32 is real long. So we're going to kind of split the difference here. We'll watch time a little bit, maybe try to get it the best way we can. 31 kind of finishes the furnishings of the tabernacle, things that we had talked about, the furnishings, the clothing, all that had been done. This summarizes it up a little bit too. This is probably the finishing of it because it actually calls a couple of people out and what they're going to do in the tabernacle, the way they're going. So let's go ahead and get started. Verses 1 through 6 and 31, chapter 31 of Exodus. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, See, I have called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom, and in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, to devise cunning works, to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and in cutting of stones to set them, and in carving of timber, to work in all manner of workmanship. And I, behold, I have given with him Aholiab, the son of Ashmach, of the tribe of Dan. And in the hearts of all that are wise-hearted I have put wisdom, that they may make all that I have commanded thee. Now, what he's talking about here, jumping from chapter to chapter this week, all these things that we've been talking about, the curtains, the utensils, the gold on it, all the different facets of the clothing of the high priest, the ephod, all that, the setting of the jewels, the cutting of the jewels, all that. He said these two in particular have been set out. They have been filled. They've been given the knowledge to be able to do this. Now, whether that was passed down from their families or whether they had gained that supernaturally, just God provided for them right then, I'm not sure. I don't think it says in the Bible anywhere, but I think it had probably been passed down through their families because they were the Egyptians, and we know that even today, the Jewish people, there's a lot of jewelers that are Jewish people. I'm not saying that all of them are, but they have some that have a lot of craftsmanship with this. Not only with the jewels, but also with the timbers. When they go about cutting for the trees, the acacia trees, and cutting all these that they said they would, they're going to be looking at that. So he's giving them all manners of understanding, and not just them, because it says, and all that are wise-hearted I have put wisdom. Okay, so they're the two leaders that's going to be directing this.
I was thinking when reading all of that, where there's the fact is there's not just one body but many members, and
right.
All particular, how they set out Sunday service, and here all of these, everybody has their part. Every one of these, they had a reason to do what God was telling them. I mean, in other words, nobody could do their part except them. And
right.
It's the same with the body of Christ.
Right. I mean, yeah, I could carve something up, but it wouldn't look very good. You wouldn't want to look at it very much. Now, my uncle, he could carve in leather and carve in Dad's brother in wood. Oh man, he made some great looking billfolds. I wish I still had my old billfold that he made when I was a kid. He just did that leather work, and it was really neat, really pretty. But anyway, there are some people blessed with that. They have the patience and they have the understanding to do that. He also was a kind of semi-professional taxidermist. He would work on the animals. He mounted a squirrel that I shot, and a teal, and several ducks that they shot, and things like that. So anyway, but this is a particular not everybody has that ability. But these did, and these were, one was the tribe of Judah, and the other one was of the tribe of Dan. So we already see the Levites, the priests and stuff, came from the Levite tribe. So as you said, there have been several tribes that set out. And later on, we'll see Joshua is a different tribe, and Caleb, all these are different tribes that they set up. These things all need to work together, as you said. Verse 7, he kind of continues on. The tabernacle of the congregation, the ark of the testimony, the mercy seat that is thereupon, all the furniture of the tabernacle, and the tabernacle and his furniture, the pure candlestick with all its furniture, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offerings with all his furniture, and the laver and his foot, and the cloths of service, and the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons to minister in the priest's office, and the anointing oil and sweet incense for the holy place, according to all that I have commanded thee to do. So all these particular furnishings and clothing, all this is what he's given them to do. And we talked about last week, Bertha asked the question about, what else did they have? These are what are named. But then after that you said, and all of its utensils that goes with it, and all of it, the furnishings that go with it, and all the furniture. So there were lots of things that, like we said, the tongs that they used to get the coals out, the hooks that they used, the little shovels to get the ashes out, the little brooms, the lavers that the vases, if you want to call it, that they used to pour. All these things, we don't have that particular detail, but we know that they had to have them because they, were using these just like we use them.
Probably had to have special tools to make even
some of this stuff. I'm sure they did, and those people that they called out had those tools. They had them able to use it, and once they do all this, then they had to go, like we said earlier, they had to go and anoint all of it and get it made. Even when they were making, not so much here, but later on when they make the temple, the rocks couldn't be cut there on site. They had to get the rocks in the quarry and bring them out, and they had to be cut to size out there and brought in because they didn't want any, if I remember right, didn't want any cutting there.
How long did it take them? Have we read how long?
We haven't. I haven't found that out. I did go back and look to see, and we'll get an idea of it here in a little bit. It gives us some time frames, but this is about 3 months after they started, is what, if I remember right, and then the 40 days he's on the mountain. So about 4.5, 5 months that they're out from Egypt, and a little later on it'll say in a year or so. So we'll kind of see probably through, could be the rest of that year that it took them, maybe not that long at all. But I did go back and look. You asked, wonder how long it took them and how many places they moved. They only moved like 2 or 3 places that I could find. They set up here in Sinai, and they stayed there a long time. And then when they were getting ready to go over, they first started to go over, and then they had to back up, do it again. So 40 years, pretty much over in this place. And then they went to Shiloh. And Shiloh, maybe another place in between, but Shiloh was where Samuel, where they found the temple over there. Samuel, that's where Eli was serving and some of the others. There was a couple of more places that they mentioned before the actual tabernacle or temple was made, where Solomon built the temple. But they didn't move it very much. So,
but it took quite a while for them to set up, and then the rest of them to get there.
Yeah.
Some of them could already be set up and there for a while by the time you get 2 million people and all the herds and all that.
It's a long ways. That's right. I don't know how long you'd have to. Just thinking 100,000 people approximately fits in the Rose Bowl. So 20 of those, roughly, that'd be 20, 2 million people. Just when we went to the ball game down in Dallas, it don't sit 100,000 in that seats, don't. But the parking lots around it was just horrible. As far as, I mean, the parking lots was there. We walked in because we took a taxi in and walked in. And I was trying to remember how we had to walk probably a half a mile to get out because the cabs, I don't know where they were at when we tried to get one to go back. We finally got one and headed back out, but we had to walk like half a mile away from the stadium before we could get it.
Well, Ukraine right now, they're talking about that 40-mile long,
Oh yeah.
but they got 300,000 troops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of people and a lot of men. That would be, and how long that would be, and how long it takes to go over. They got all 2 million people across the Dead Sea, not Dead Sea, the Red Sea, that evening or that night. That's what it sounded like. That time frame, it was 24-hour period or less. So it can be done, but here again, if it's a mile wide, or it may not have been a mile wide, but however wide it is, they had to, it's long enough they couldn't get around it very easily. Any other questions or any comments? Verse 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that does sanctify you. Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doth any work in the Sabbath, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. So, up until this time, this commandment hadn't been given, but it was perceived because it was passed down, like we said, from Adam and Eve, that God created the earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. But now God's putting it into a commandment to his people, the Israelites, okay, that this is what they're going to be doing. And of course, we talked about that a little bit on how much his work, don't do any work on the Sabbath. And they had to go specify, you couldn't walk so far, less than a quarter of a mile, I think it is, and all these different facets that perpetuate work. They had to fix meals the night before, so they couldn't eat anything the next day. I mean, they could eat it, but they couldn't work or make food on that next day. Now, of course, this is, it's respected for the Jewish people. Us, it's a little different. When Jesus said he was a fulfillment of that, then the new covenant, we're not bound by this Sabbath. Romans 14:5 and Colossians 2 and 16, 17 shows us the principle is still important. We don't need to work all the time. We need some rest. But every day is our Sabbath. We need to rest in the Lord. Our rest is in the finished work of Christ, and it's never to be eclipsed by our work for God. So we see that today. Many times people working in the church will get burned out because they just seem to work. We have to kind of figure out a time frame, something, a schedule that we have time. Some people, I know some of the ministers, they take off on Mondays after Sunday because they want to rest. That's their day. They said, okay, I'll help you all during the rest of the week, but don't do anything on Monday. I'm closed. The shop's closed. And I know that sounds bad, but that's you got to respect that because they work during the week getting their sermon together and getting everything else. So anyway, everybody has their own different schedule that they have. Now as I said, we aren't bound by that, but we still need to understand and make every day holy unto the Lord. Exodus 18, 31:18, and he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of God. So these are the 10 commandments, the 2 tablets that are known that they brought down from Mount Sinai. And he was going to bring them down to the people and tell them, these are the tablets, and this is what you guys agreed to. So a lot of times we say something's written in stone. And what does that mean? It's not going to be changed because it's there. You can chip out another sign or something like that. It's kind of like today's when the kids get the tattoos. It's pretty permanent. If you get something on there and you want to change it, you better be able to spell right or change it somehow if they're going to actually do that. And it talks about these 2 tablets are what eventually are placed in the Ark of the Tabernacle or the Ark of the Testimony or the Ark of the Covenant. Later, they also put Aaron's rod, and we haven't seen that it's budded, but it will be budded, and a jar of manna. Okay, that says remembrance. That's what is in the tabernacle or in the altar of the tabernacle. Okay, so we'd be finished here in 20 minutes. That'd be quick. So we're going to start on 32. And it's a long one, so we're just going to go not quite halfway, but we'll go down. So when he comes down off of the mountain, okay, that's what God had already told him. He'd finished communing with him. Now he's coming down off the mountain. Chapter 32, verse 1. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mountain, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. Like we said, he's been in this presence about 4 or 5 months, maybe a little bit longer, because he came back from Midian and had to deal with Pharaoh for several days before that. So I'd say at least maybe 6 months. They're already given up on him. They've seen all the miracles that had happened. They've seen that God was with him, that when there was no way out of the Red Sea, they opened it up. When there was no food in the desert, they had water and food that was given to them, and meat. And the sweet water was changed, poor water was changed to sweet water, bitter water. All these miracles that had been done, and they're already given up. What are they actually doing? Are they giving up on Moses? They're giving up on God. Moses was the go-between. He was the one that was the in-between, the go-between. But basically, they're already giving up on God. They had been indwelled or instilled for the last 400 years of the Egyptian gods, and it's awful hard to get that out of them.
And they didn't have a temple yet.
No.
Moses had come down with all the, what we read was the instruction that
Right.
God gave him.
Right.
They hadn't heard these instructions.
They hadn't heard anything yet. Now, he had said, before, this is what we're going to do, and this is what it is, and you got to agree to it. Now he put it in stone for them, and it's coming down. But there's a lot of other issues that he's gave with them. So he delayed coming down from the mountain. It says this troubled the people of Israel. It's true that Moses delayed, but God had a wonderful purpose for Moses' delay, and it would soon be over. Yet, because the people couldn't see the reason for the delay, they allowed it to make them stumble. Moses was gone 40 days. That's what's said back in 24 and 18. This seemed like a long time. That is, a month and a week, a little over a month and a week. Okay? But it was a short time for Moses. He was communing with God. And to him, it didn't seem like it was that much time. Certainly, it was a short time related to the outworking of God's plan. God gave him the instructions, and of course, Moses had to write it down. I would think that's what he would do. Sometimes we don't really understand their ability to remember may have been a lot better than ours. Today, we're crammed with so much information from the very first, but it's still the same thing, I think. Um, we allow what we want to remember, we remember. What we don't want to remember, if you're reading something or whatever, you're just going right over it. Okay, yeah, I read it, but I can't tell you what it was now. Some people do that. When you read books, when we had to read books for book reports, you remembered it long enough to write a book report for it, and you forgot it. Yeah, I read the Scarlet Letter, but somebody starts talking about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that I do remember a Hester Prynne or whatever, person was in. I heard that name the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, that was in there. How we handle God's ordained delays is a good measure of our spiritual maturity. A lot of times today, God deals differently with Israel than they do with us today because we're in a different, we're under grace. Now, it's not to say that he won't, but he did back then. He had his own prophets. He would come down and visit the people, things like that. Today we don't have it. We see that in the Old Testament. We can read through that and we think, oh boy, they were every day they was having communion with God and things like that. No, it wasn't. Many years passed when nobody would hear from God. Even the prophets wouldn't even hear from God. So, but today we hear a lot, but since it's not on our mind, we don't see those things. We have to go accepting God is, and accepting Christ is a work of faith, a walk of faith. And we have to rely upon that. If we allow delays to make us drift off into sin or lapse into resignation, then we are reacting poorly to his ordained delays. A lot of times God tells us, yeah, you can, we'll ask for something, and he won't tell us right then, or he won't change it right then. It'll change later on. But if it had changed right then, something else may have changed, and that would have led us astray, or we would have gone down a different path. We don't know what's good for us. God does. And so many times we have to wait on him to tell us. We want things to go right away. We want to get from the first to the end. But that's not God's way as far as when he wants us to establish. If we don't learn something, if somebody shows us something, doing things, going through it, if I'm not actually doing it, I can see it, but I'm not really interpreting it. When I have to do it myself, that's when it starts getting, okay, I got to either figure this out or do it the way they told me to do it. And so it takes a little bit of time.
Well, at this time, was he still providing them with the manna and
yes.
the quail?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, give up on God, but yet God was still providing for them.
It was still there
every day. I mean,
that didn't stop, is what I understood, until they crossed over into the promised land, the milk of honey.
Well, that was what I thought, unless I missed something.
No. Yeah, it's just like, oh yeah, he gave us that. But it completely, I don't know. It just, sometimes we just can't reason why people would do that. Even today, say, you can tell somebody and they'll just say, no, that's not right. And I'm like, why is that not right? That's truth. That's the facts. Oh no, that can't be right. Okay, you can believe what you want, but the facts is the facts. So the instigator of this, a lot of times gets blamed on Aaron. Now he was the focal point of it, but the people said gathered to Aaron and told him, let's do this, bring us, make us gods. So, but the thing that the problem was, Aaron was okay with it. This was Moses' brother. He had seen the very same things that the people had seen. He had seen, even been a part of it. He was the spokesperson for Moses with Aaron. With Pharaoh.
Was he the high priest yet?
He was appointed. We saw that he was going to be the high priest, but it hadn't happened yet.
Oh, the temple.
Because the tabernacle wasn't set up yet. That's right.
Well, this demonstrates a weakness in Aaron that he went along with. And we, in today's time, we've got to be careful that we don't show a weakness and kind of glide over some of the sin.
That's right.
The Bible's still the same. But we got to be careful that we don't soft pedal on it.
We wouldn't be politically correct.
Today. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but we're no better than Aaron.
That's what it amounts to.
Yeah.
Said centuries later, Apostle Paul dealt with the same error with the Galatians. He tells them, "Are you so foolish, having begun of the Spirit, and being made perfect by the flesh?" The flesh isn't going to make you perfect. It's the Spirit of God. It's possible to begin the Christian life trusting Jesus and then later to trust oneself or one's own spirituality. And that's easy to do, even for us. We start relying on ourselves instead of on God.
Ministers, if you noticed, they have a problem with that. They get into self, like God, so many times people say, well, God told me to tell you. Well, two things. First of all, when you say that, it better be God. And the second thing, people throw up the deal, is God really? And I believe God talks to people today through His Word, and talk, and some through the Spirit.
Right.
But we get to the place, if we're not careful, and we don't want to offend people, you know what I mean? Don't want to hurt people. And, we're human beings.
Right. It's easy to get into that mode very, very easily because it's hard. We are dealing with humans and we get upset. One of the things that they call it anthropomorphic. See it right? We don't know what God's like. Now, the only thing that we know is it said God made us, man, in His own image. What does that mean? Do we look like God? God doesn't have a body, a physical body like we think of. He has a spiritual body. So, in order to understand that, we attribute, and the scriptures do, if you go all through it, they attribute His hands, He gets angry, He gets all these different emotions that humans have. I don't know if, that's the way they see it. God got mad at me when He did this. No, He told you something. And just like a parent, I'm not mad at you. I told you not to do that. I'm going to whip your hind end. I'm not mad at you. I just told you what was going to happen when you did it. And you went and did it. That's the way I view it. So we look at it, but in the child's viewpoint, oh, Mom and Dad hates me, beating the tar out of me, So that's kind of the way I see man and the human relationship with God. We don't understand how God thinks. We don't understand anything about God, really.
We were, when I, several years ago, we were in a meeting, some ministers and an overseer. We were discussing some financial problems and situations. We'd sold a piece of property and they had fallen, behind in their payments and everything. So they were, again, giving a sob story. And I was pretty straightforward, but the overseer time, he said, he was a very, he said, don't let my demeanor fool you. I think that's what we do God sometimes. God says, I love you, I'm here for you. We forget, he's also a God of wrath. And he's a God of justice.
I told you what was going to happen, and I'm not going back on my word. That's exactly right.
We haven't changed much, have we?
No, over the 6,000 years of human history, we haven't. Verse 2. Aaron was quick to jump on it, though, wasn't he? And Aaron said unto them, break off those golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all the people brake off their golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graving tool. So he had some experience too. After he had made it a molten calf, and they said, these be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So he actually, they got it, and they had to melt it down and make a cast for it, first of all. So in the sand, they made a little image, and then they would heat the gold up and pour it in there and let it settle. And then once it settled, they dug the sand out and got the image up, and then they carved a little bit on it. So they did this, and all the people, they were generous because they just started, okay, yeah, we're going with this. This wasn't the Spirit-inspired craftsmanship of the two that we talked about earlier, mentioned in 31. This was sin-inspired of Aaron. He thought it out, melted the gold, molded it, fashioned it with an engraving tool. It says calf's not a good translation of the Hebrew hegel. A young bull in his first strength is what is meant. And it also could describe up to a 3-year-old animal. So, we always think of a calf, but, no, it could have been a pretty good sized bull. Then they said, this is your God. Aaron didn't anoint this thing as their God. He simply went along with the people as they proclaimed it as their God. He was probably flattered by their admiration of what he created. Ooh, that's pretty. We want to, that's real good. But true leadership would have cried out, this is idolatry. We must destroy this calf. It shouldn't even have been done. You people are wrong in calling this creation of man your God. But Aaron wasn't the true leader. He was an example of the one who leads by following popular opinion. That's what happens today. And all, good, bad, and ugly that we have in politics. What do? They go out and poll people. Okay, what's the popular opinion? That's what I want to support. That's what I want to do.
They put questions out there like they want.
Like they want it. That's exactly right. You go to, we're getting ready to come up on the voting season here pretty soon. Some of the candidates are starting to come up even for school boards and all that. You go out there and you try to find what they actually believe. To me, there's not they say a few things, but it's pretty vague, and you really don't know where they stand a lot of times.
American values, family values,
Yeah.
hear that a lot. But
Yeah.
What kind of values are you talking about?
That's right. That's right.
I know it's well brother. It said who took the earrings off the
Sons and the daughters. They'd already started that back then, so. The nose rings and all the piercings and all that stuff, break them boogers off and belly button things and whatever. They'd already done that, that's right. It says here in 1 Kings 12 and 28, Jeroboam, which is a king later on, borrowed this statement when he installed the 2 golden calves at the division of the kingdom. Jeroboam was one of the first kings of, I believe it was Israel, I believe. I had to go back and read the story. But he set up a kingdom other than what God had. It wasn't supposed to be from God. Or it wasn't from God. Verse 5 and 6. Ungodly and immoral worship at the golden calf. Verse 5. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. And they rose up early on the morrow and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. So here, when Aaron went ahead, then he built an altar to it and started sacrificing to it. That just kept getting worse and worse and worse. That was what they did with the gods back in Egypt. It said it was bad enough to have a golden calf that the people praised for their escape from Egypt, which it wasn't. The second step was even worse. He honored and sanctified this idol with animal sacrifices. He made the calf and then he made the altar to worship it. Then they made a feast day. Okay? Aaron was not crass enough to say, let's do away with the Lord God, as Israel saw. Aaron didn't take away the Lord God. He simply added the golden calf. That's kind of taking the devil's advocate there. He really didn't supersede God. He did, but he was just saying, we don't know who Moses was, where he's gone or anything. Now, one of the things I didn't read, it was back in here, I didn't know if you noticed. When they was up on Mount Sinai, what did they see? Clouds, and lightnings, and fire, and stuff up there. For their own sakes, they didn't know. He may have been shot by lightning up there, or burned up, or anything. They didn't know. 40 days. He went up there, and I don't know if they told him how long it was going to be. So the people got restless. And it's like, well, they didn't have anything to do. What do they say? The idle mind. That's right.
In verse 6, it says, and they rose up to play. I've had one commentary that I read where that rose up to play, they thought it was the sexual
Exactly.
things and things.
Exactly. It's just like it was back in Egypt. That when they rose up to play, then they rose up and started acting out, started doing like they did back in Egypt, what the Egyptians did. And that was what the Egyptians did. As we've gone through this and talked about the clothing that the priests wore, most of the time the Egyptians didn't wear any clothes when the priests, or very little. It was both the men and the women that was doing this. So it was very sensual, very sexual, and that's what it does seem to me. Later on down there, if you read them deep, it says this is a tasteful way to speak of gross immorality among the people of Israel. Their worship included eating and drinking in the sense of getting drunk, and sexual immorality.
It's the same today.
Yeah.
Man has taken what God meant to be sacred, the relationship between man and wife, and producing children, and made it into God. And just look. It's on TV. You can go to a garage sometime and you'll see mufflers and on signs for mufflers, and they got females up. It's all about man is always, Satan is always taking what God meant for sacredness and God's benefit and used it to his own.
We go back to the Adam and Eve when they asked where they were at. Why did they hide? They hid themselves because they knew they were naked. They were naked before, but they didn't have that sense that they were doing something wrong. That sin that they had done put that on them to where now I'm naked. I need to get clothed. Where before it wasn't there. Even though they were, you would say,
all in
going
innocence.
around. It was.
So much more innocence.
It was.
Does it tell us what the others that remained true did during this? I mean, God had already moved upon others with the Spirit and give them other skills and one thing and another. That
Right.
It doesn't insinuate that 100% of them.
Oh, no. No, and we'll see that. We won't get through it tonight, but we'll see that as we get later on. Next week, we'll get into that because we're probably going to finish up here in just a few
What
minutes.
gets me is God still used Aaron.
Yeah, he did. That's,
When I say God, I mean,
yeah. I guess if you want to think of it as he didn't instigate it, but he went along with it. But God still had already said, I'm going to use Aaron, and he doesn't go back on his word.
Don't you think some of that came because of Moses?
I do believe that's right.
Because, you know, our families can be blessed because of us in our position with God.
That's right.
You know, it can extend outward.
I think that's part of it too, that he knew he should have done right. He should have listened. He's older than Moses. He should have known. He's seen all these things. It says there, if you go through that I and double I, both of those suggesting drunken orgies, drunken, immoral, sexual play. It says one Hebrew dictionary uses the phrase conjugal caresses, as it talks about in Genesis 26:8, 39:14, 39:17. It says less than 2 months before this, okay? So he was up there for 40 days, so not even 2 months. Israel heard the voice of God himself from heaven, audibly speaking the 10 Commandments to the nation. And now they're already less than 2 months. Okay? They've already turned their back on him. Seems like it's like, how in the world would they do that? But we can do the very same thing if we don't keep our eyes on God.
spiritually deep with me, but
That's right. That's right. Well, we'll go ahead and stop tonight. It's kind of a decent spot of the places. Either this set of scripture to the next set that doesn't want to stop. So we'll go ahead because we just kind of see what happened, and the next one is what God told Moses to do. So we're getting back to the scene on the mountain.
now they're going to get their spanking.
Yeah, now they're getting their spanking. So.
Well, you know, along the same lines, you were talking about of us correcting our children, one thing and another. We need to appreciate when God, you're getting a little over into the ditch there instead of in the main path and line us out.
Don't you hate that though? When somebody starts telling, we don't like it. No, we start to, boy, it just makes us mad even sometimes that we got caught, or that that's not right. We knew it wasn't right when we started. We just want somebody to say it's okay. That's where we are today.
It's like a lot of people get with you and they try to, when they're living in sin and doing things like that, they're always trying to convince you. And really, they're not trying to convince you. They're trying to convince themselves, you know, that this is okay. And
Yeah.
We
We play a lot of mind games to do it. So, well, everybody say hi, Brother Bill.
Hi, Brother Bill.
See y'all later. Talk to you next week.